So in an office, everybody gets assigned a role. This can be manager, front desk agent, sales representative, you name it. Now, when it comes to who is allowed to do what, it is usually based on roles. One of the concepts AWS manages permissions is via role-based access control. Let's say somebody needs to co-sign a contract. Who can do that? Well, usually you need a VP or higher. But then again, this is related to a purchase HR has made. So you wouldn't just want any VP, but a VP from HR. Besides just roles, there are also certain groups of people in the company. That could be HR employees or folks from marketing and so on. AWS is doing the same. Let's look at the terms we're going to discuss today in detail. There are IAM users, which we can imagine as people working in our fictitious company. These users can assume certain roles and are in certain groups. Now, it is important to understand that these concepts have a lot of overlap. A VP could be in the group of all VPs in the company, while he also has the role of VP. At the same time, this one person maybe also has the role of project manager for a certain project, and they could also be in the group of all people working on that specific project. In AWS, the concepts of group and role can at times be used for the same abstract concepts. But there are important differences as to when you want to use a role and when you want to use a group. To understand this, we need to talk about policies first. Similarly to the office world, where a policy could be X is allowed to open mail, or X is allowed to sign a contract. In AWS, a policy can be X can read files from a specific S3 bucket, or X is allowed to start an EC2 instance, run a Lambda, etc. Policies can also expressly forbid certain things. Okay, so let's bring all of these concepts together. An IAM policy can be attached to either a role, a specific user, or a group of users. A user can be in a group of users, and a role is something that can be assumed based on what the circumstances require. So, how do you know what to attach a policy to? A user, a group of users, or a role? Let's define a bit deeper what roles are about. In AWS, pretty much every action you can take needs an identity performing it. This is also sometimes called a principal. And a principal does not have to be a user, i.e. a person sitting in front of their computer clicking something. So this is one of the main reasons why we need to distinguish between users and roles. Users in AWS are meant for actual people who log in with a username and a password. But roles can do almost everything a user could do. So a role can be assumed by either a person or a computer in order to do something. Let's say you want to upload a file to an S3 bucket to share it with your coworkers. An AWS administrator could attach the policy to be allowed to do that to a specific user. Maybe it is your personal network drive where only you can write files to. Or the administrator could attach the policy to a whole group. Like everyone in the group of HR employees is allowed to write to the HR files S3 bucket. Or maybe the administrator wants only a certain role to be able to write files. And that could be the case for a Lambda function, i.e. a computer that did some processing and wants to update the list of employees in the HR directory. So in that case, it would make sense to attach the policy to a role that can be assumed by either a computer program or an actual person making updates to the employee directory. In terms of permissions, this means that you as a user cannot directly write the files, but you can have permissions to assume a role that can do that. In the end, it is all about finding ways to assign permissions so that they can be efficiently managed by the administrators and audited by the security folks. Attaching permissions directly to users, not using groups, and only using roles when absolutely necessary is certainly possible, but it will almost certainly result in something that is very hard to maintain and keep an eye on. I hope I could make this topic understandable. If you want to move on, check out the previous parts in the series and subscribe so you don't miss the next. If you want to stick around, here's 2 questions the Cloud Practitioner exam might ask. Question 1. Which service is provided free of charge? A. Amazon EC2, B. AWS S3, C. DynamoDB, or D. AWS IAM? The answer is D. IAM is always free of charge. Question 2. An enterprise has an app running on an AWS EC2 instance. The instance requires access to multiple AWS services, such as Amazon S3 and Amazon DynamoDB. Which method is the most streamlined for granting permissions? A. Set up an IAM user, incorporating its access keys and secret key within the app. B. Generate an IAM user and utilize its access key and secret key to set up a CLI profile on the EC2 instance. C. Construct an IAM role with the essential permissions and link it to the primary IAM user. D. Establish an IAM role with the necessary permissions and associate it with the EC2 instance. A is not great. The access key and secret key are meant for actual users of AWS, not to assign to machines. B is also not amazing. It is basically the same as before, but with the command line interface. C. Now we're getting closer by using a role for the EC2 instance, but we should not use our primary IAM user. D is correct. This is exactly what roles are meant to do.